We now experience a second revolution, a second digital revolution. The fact that the digital image has not a body, but it has no material, it's just visual information, it can be transmitted through the internet. This even changed the whole panorama more dramatically. The emergence of internet, social networks, cell phones, recent resources as Google, Wikipedia, and so on, provide a completely new context in which the visual culture should adapt. This exhibition, from here on, is an attempt to advance which will be the forthcoming trends, how artists react to this new technocracy. And somehow I would like to state that the idea is to provide some ways in which digital humanism could be proved. A lot of people get scared about technology. Technological progress implies risk, and we must accept it because we cannot do anything else. I mean, we cannot stop it. Instead, we should impose an ethical dimension to those risks. And in this exhibition, we deal, for instance, with massification, with common trends, with more or less imposed patterns. The artists being presented here try to fight back against those rules and try to have a personal voice, try to be critical. It's in that sense that I feel they are showing this attempt to build a new digital humanism. Humanism means to give back values to the subjectivity, to the individual, to the possibility of using technology for the common good, for the common wills. This is a magnificent piece by Penelope Umbrico. When we see images in the internet, we realize that we find very specific topics like sunsets. Sunsets probably are the most conventional and kitschy situations in which people would like to appear photographed. In that case, Penelope Umbrico is collecting thousands of those pictures. They are probably technically a disaster because amateurs doesn't have the right skills to do proper images in such situations. But Penelope is collecting those mistakes, and she proves that thousands of anything becomes interesting. So I think that behind that strategy, there's the idea that today recycling sometimes is more important than making. There are too many pictures, so maybe we should adopt a sort of image environmentalist attitude. That's Penelope Umbrico's position. Maybe it's more interesting to compose works, compose meaning, using images which already exist. That's somehow the idea, the leitmotif in this exhibition, artwork as collection. In the very first beginning of photography, photographers were interested in take shots which were having some significance by themselves. Today, in a world with image massification, we realize that meaning should be woven with an articulation, with a sort of structure of many different images. An image is just a word, and in order to talk, we must sequence words, we must sequence pictures. Cartier-Bresson published a book in the early 50s titled The Decisive Moment. In the introductory text, he explained that any action has a climax and that the photographer should capture that climax because it was the way to summarize all the tension of a situation and explain it better. Today, since there are thousands, millions of photographers taking pictures of any event, there's no one single decisive moment, because probably all the clicks, all the shots might have a similar value. So the idea of that decisive moment is gone, or at least is vanishing. But instead, now we notice the emergence of another concept which could be called the undecisive moment. Photographs are recording of whatever. They become conventional, banal, and that banality brings to that concept of undecisive moment.
Kameran now get the target on the road. Target on who you take.
This invites us to reflect if this kind of voyeurism is the result of the camera massification or just the opposite. If camera massification is how the industry responds to this voyeuristic instinct. We live in a panoptic society. Cameras are all over. So everything is recorded. The whole world has been mapped and we can get images of whatever you want. Every time, 24 hours per day. And in that situation of massive recording, these outputs could be considered as raw material which could be useful for new ideas. This is a funny piece by a British music group. They were not having funds to produce their own video clip, so they were performing on public areas and surveillance cameras. And later they requested the municipality the tapes of those recordings, because in Britain you have the right to check how you have been recorded by public cameras. And they edit the material to compose the final video clip. And this is a wonderful piece by Penelope Umbrico from pictures in eBay to sell TV sets. So usually you take a photograph of the product you want to sell, but you are not an expert and you just flash, and what you get is the reflection of yourself in front of the TV screen. The huge image massification will lead two different ways to the artist. One, the recycling attitude. This is okay, I notice, I'm aware of this incredible amount of available pictures, so I stop taking pictures by myself and I just work with those pictures already existing. So I'm using this method of the found image. Or just the opposite. If we feel that everything has been photographed and that we are confronted to that archive, that image bank, which is absolutely exhaustive and universal, maybe the right question is, which are the missing images? Which are the images which haven't been taken yet? Eric Kessel is one of the masters in found photography. He enjoys going to flea markets, just browsing, just looking for strange material, and he's able to get treasures from the garbage. I mean, what for someone is a leftover, he's able to recognize some qualities. He's interested mainly in accidents and mistakes, pictures that have been discarded because of the poor quality. And he's able to see that this poor quality or these mistakes repeated, accumulated, they will be able to generate quite an impressive effect on the viewer. Eric Kessel is able to unveil these values. Other people just don't see it. And most of his projects deal with vernacular images, vernacular photography. Photographs taken by amateurs, family albums, photographs for brochures, for touristical reasons, for postcards. I mean, all these kind of situations which usually are not present in the high history of photography. These are low cult. These are interesting because of their sociological function, but not for the interest in the aesthetic elements that can be there. Very clear example of how the art activity consists on adopting images. This is selecting. This is, if you wish, curating, because curating means selecting, organizing, articulating, and providing a message with that. Another idea could be what Joachim Schmidt is doing. He's presenting 100 books. Each book is dealing with a different encyclopedic category. But this criteria to organize knowledge, to organize images, is very idiot, is stupid, is not rational. And that's the funny thing. Joachim is collecting pictures from the internet. Internet is the universal archive today. And he's displaying these books under different categories. But the funny thing is that the criteria are quite crazy. For instance, this is faces in holes, or currywurst, or pizzas, or airlines menus, or kisses, or Mona Lisa in the Louvre Museum, things like that. So it's a sort of inventory, of anthology, of what people are interested in photographing. In our age, in the digital times, I feel that this is showing how absurd and fantastic this kind of classification criteria can become. It reminds of Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges, when in one of his famous tales was dealing about animal classification, and he was saying, well, animals could be classified in mermaids, or animals belonging to the emperor, or animals which are very thin, or animals which are with 3 legs, or animals which are not included in the classification, and so on.